to start your day.
We'll be having in a few, but let me hook you up. You know, in this life, there's always the question of what's your plan? Uko na mpango gani? How are you planning yourself, especially for the future? Now, you know, here on the Situation Room, we talk about the future a lot. We talk about plans, goals, and the tough choices and that shape them. But here's a question. What's your plan? Life's moving fast. Bills, dreams, responsibilities, somewhere in between, the future creeps up on you. You know, ICA Lion helps you to protect, to grow, and to plan for what matters most. Don't wait for that wake-up call. Don't just sit and wait until things hit the fan. Don't wait until you can no longer move for you to start planning. Start planning today. So when you talk about planning today, we talk about insurance, investments, and peace of mind. All that simple and accessible, made by you sitting down and planning for the same. So because if you're planning for the future, it's high time you did it today. Because if you don't plan, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And the ICEA line is telling you and asking you, what's your plan? Perhaps it's an opportunity for you to reach out to ICEA, sit down and come up with a plan, especially for your future. But even after getting this plan and everything is sorted out, you need to spend these investments on something that is really great. And in a world that we live today, you know what is frustrating, Dismas? Fact that you can get online, you are surfing, and all of a sudden power goes and you're connected. You know, you're disconnected. You can no longer access internet or your meetings, you know, or do business. And while doing that, your quality of life is degraded. But that needs to be fixed. That is why today, Airtel is here with a solution. Airtel is here to tell you that through the Airtel Smart Connect Home and Office Wi-Fi, you are sorted. That there is one unlimited data. So once you're connected, the data is unlimited. There is no day you will sit down and just imagine that at some point network itakatika. Once you pay for it, it's unlimited throughout the day. So you pay once and you're sorted for the entire month. No bundle anxiety. You know the way you're doing that thing and then you start buffering because the internet has gone kaput. Now, you get 15 Mbps for just 1,999 or 30 Mbps for 2,999 valid for 30 days. And the setup fee is only 1,000 bob. And you pay that once. Plus, the router has a battery backup. So even when the lights go out, you're still online. You also get to connect with all your devices from your phone, TV, laptop, and even smart devices. So we're not just talking about having a device that connects you to the internet, but even when the owners of power decide to go away with their power, you're still connected because of the battery backup that will sort you out. So that's the real game changer, I would say, for your home, for your small office. So if you are tired of buffing or unreliable connections, just call 0700 100 500, 0730 100 500 for home delivery and connection. Airtel Smart Connect, home and office Wi-Fi. Gentlemen, if that is not message to you, if that is not the gospel, we'll endelea kubafa hapo, and then we'll have that conversation on a later date. But, you know, we'll have that conversation on a later date. But we said at 7 a.m. we're having a conversation on ION 2027, the political strategies and alignments. That will come at around 8. But here we are about Tanzania's polls in question. Just what next? And seated here is Felix Wambua, who is the National Coordinator, Free Kenya Movement. Felix, karibu sana. I like your outfit, green jungle, eh?
Thank you.
Karibu sana. So
the Tanzanian colors.
You just had to go there, eh? You just had to go there. Yeah. And when you're having this discussion about Tanzania, I want to give you a job. But for all of us, we want to talk about the proverbs. And today, we are in Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone, you talk about the diamonds that come from that country. You talk about the economy that continues to do better despite the challenges that they go through. But here are just some of the facts about Sierra Leone. Located in the southwest coast of West Africa, bordered by Guinea to the north and Liberia to the south and southeast with Atlantic Ocean to the west. Now, Freetown is the capital and largest city, and it features one of the world's largest natural harbors. But the problem we're getting today from Sierra Leone, a waterside stone is not afraid of the rain. The stone is nearly always wet. Let me repeat that again. The waterside stone is not afraid of rain. The stone is nearly always wet. I start with the Dismas. How would you interpret that?
I thought it was meant for the guest. Yeah. So I switched off. So now let me switch on. I think the proverb is all about that when you're going to venture in any activity, you must appreciate the professional hazards and be ready for it. So, for instance, if you're going to be a journalist, you must be ready that you're going to be covering some sources which others may be not very pleasant, others may be very pleasant. So you must be prepared for your job. Yeah, I think that is how I would explain it.
Joseph.
Well, yeah, I think it speaks to staying the course. That the more experienced and exposed you are to situation, it builds your resilience, and you're able to, like it says, the stone remains always wet. So it's about experience, resilience, and staying the course. And in spite of the hardships, just stay the course. Stay the course.
Felix.
Yeah, I believe in what my colleagues have just said, but to add on to that is that we have always to be ready of the situations, of the seasons, because no matter what, the rains will come. No matter what, we have to always be ready for everything that comes.
Yeah, indeed. It's all about if you are going to war, right? You have gone through training, you've been prepared. You know, if I'm going to war, the other side will probably come with the same weapons that I have, or even more sophisticated. And there are two ways: either I will win or lose. So whichever the case, a war is there to fight. Blood has to be shed, and perhaps if all goes well, you win. If not, maybe you are the collateral damage. But all in all, you're ready for it.
You get posthumous recognition.
Exactly. You know, yeah. But let's talk about Tanzania's polls in question. Felix, from National Coordinator of Free Kenya Movement. It is the question of looking at how the region is. You look at Tanzania, the elections that took place in Tanzania, and the aftermath. So citizens going to the streets saying the elections have not been free and fair. That is followed by a crackdown by the police. We see yesterday we were seeing that video of a military vehicle just running over people on the streets, and one asks the question, even as President Samia Suluhu today says she wants to invite people on the table to move forward, but did it have to get here?
Sure. What is happening in Tanzania, it's something that we never thought that will ever happen in our region, because we believe in democracy, we believe in growth. Democracy must be growing, but not being shut down or being killed. The democratic space must be expanding, but not being narrowed every day, because it's the leaders that we have within the East Africa region, instead of creating more space for dissent, for opposition, they are out to silence everyone. And now we are turning from democracy to dictatorship. So we didn't see this coming the way it is in Tanzania, especially with a women leader, with a woman leader who is supposed to be motherly, who is supposed to be caring, loving for the people, but the animosity coming from her is something unimaginable.
From the civil society standpoint, even as Tanzanians were headed to the election, what was the civil society looking forward to, especially knowing that the opposition leader Tundu Lissu was in jail, the other opposition leaders were considered not to be as strong? Did the civil society, did anyone ever imagine that Tanzania would get to where it is today?
After the imprisonment of the key opposition leader, who is Tundu Lissu, we never saw anything good coming out of Tanzania. One, when you are arresting, abducting, killing, intimidating everyone, election is a process, and already during the process you are trying to wipe and sweep away anyone that seems to be strong enough, seems to be with the people, that seems to be taking over the government, but through democracy. It's something that, as we speak, not only human rights defenders or activists or even opposition, but also other professionals have been affected. We do not have freedom of speech there. We do not have the media has been curtailed, has been shut. So it's terrible. It's terrible. When we have internet being shut in this era, power going off, and someone tells you that we are able to count more than 3 million votes in darkness, it's quite disturbing. Yeah.
Dismas, we talk about the situation in Tanzania, and one of the things that continues to stand out is the fact that the media was in total blackout, the internet was shut down, so pretty much Tanzania was closed within itself. I remember I have a friend who lives in Tanzania, and I just tried to reach out, like how it is only Saturday when she was able to reach out and tell me I am safe. I wasn't in a good place. I was holed up at work. I couldn't go home, for the entire period, and paints a picture of, first of all, a country that never expected that would happen. But here's where we find ourselves. You said we don't look at the rearview mirror, we move forward. But how do we learn from the lessons and ensure that this never happens again?
I'll begin from Kasarani. You remember Kenya, for the longest time we had the Young Turks, and you have to mention Mr. Raila Odinga, who said that we have to repeal Section 2A. Section 2A is what made Kenya a one-party state. And for a long time, people had gone to the street saying, you must repeal Section 2A. But the man who had the yam and the knife then was President Moi. So everybody within KANU was saying, no, we are not going to repeal Section 2A. But President Moi shocked all and sundry when he rose up to speak, and he said, we are going to repeal Section 2A. So while there was a lot of effort from outside KANU, it took President Moi's leadership either to succumb to pressure or to give leadership and say that we are going to amend Section 2A. And I think that is the obtaining situation in Tanzania today. For any reforms to take place in Tanzania, the reforms must be driven by CCM. So the leadership of CCM has to be very deliberate and intentional that we are going to have reforms. Because you can make all the noise in Tanzania today, you can go to the top literally of Mount Kilimanjaro and say you want reforms. But the reforms will not take place till the leadership of CCM takes the position. And in my view, it serves CCM's leadership, it serves their selfish interest for them to accept reality. There are things that have changed from the time they formed CCM from Mwalimu Nyerere and Abeid Karume, that the demographics is evolving, and they have to respond to the interests and aspirations of all the citizens. And one of the key things that, in my view, they must address, well, Tanzania is a sovereign state, but we are members of the East African community, so all of us have got an insured interest in what is happening within East Africa and indeed the entire world. In my view, is for the leadership to accept reality and say that we are not going to be driving using the rearview mirror. We must accept change. Because if you don't accept change, you are going to have a latent fury, which again will explode in, the next time they're going to have an election.
How do you read what Dismas has talked about in terms of CCM has to be at the front in these changes? But right now,
this is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
My skin is my identity, my strength. It's unique and deserves care made specially for me. Nivea Radiant and Beauty Even Glow. Enriched with 95% pure vitamin C and pearl extract for visibly radiant and even-toned skin in just 2 weeks. Nivea Radiant and Beauty Even Glow. Skin is for celebrating my shade of beautiful. Nivea is for skin.
When I was called and told that I was one of the winners of last year, I couldn't believe because that money, I had not dreamt of it, of getting it. So it was a surprise to me. It has helped me a lot because I was in a very little shop. So I've moved to a better place. I have a grocery shop and an M-Pesa. And I have also bought a piece of land out of that money. It was 1 million. And on top, I was awarded 250,000 for any chosen project, which I chose Luanda's AC Primary School, where we placed a project of 250,000 shillings worth of computers. I want to give with a clean heart. So I chose a place where every child will benefit from that project.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Tanzania, just like the Kenyans did, who need to continue agitating. And they should not wait for 5 years, because this is what we need to remember. A bad election gives you a leadership that does not serve your interest. Because if they were serving your interest, they would want to consider what you're saying, so you can agree the next term, whether 4 or 5 years or 7 years, like Rwanda does, this is how we are going to operate. A president is not a leader of a nation, in my opinion. A president is an employee of the people. So you cannot say, I'm going to be in office no matter what. The people we employ in our houses, in our businesses, they don't stay with us by force.
Before the guest comes in, it's important to separate theory and practice. What Josephat is talking about in theory, 100% accurate. That is the way it's supposed to be. But it's not linear. Even after President Moi said you're going to repeal the constitution, Section 2A was done, he knew that the maintaining status quo was not sustainable, that there was immense pressure. And to save the nation from riots, from political violence, he had to, and he did it. Everybody else in the room just dropped to the ground. People were shocked, say, President Moi, I said repeal Section 2A. But he midwifed the process, and guess what? He was the president for another 10 years. So it's possible for CCM to midwife the process and ensure that their selfish interests as the political parties are captured. Because if they don't have a leadership, then you're going to have a bloodshed.
Let me go to Felix. Felix, we've had both sides speaking, right? So there is the aspect that the leadership has to want that change. They have to lead from the front because the people are pushing it. Josephat says, we cannot wait. Not only just because I just don't want to look at Tanzania, but I'm looking at it in terms of the continent. The continent, the people of this continent, the citizens of the continent cannot sit and wait for, quote unquote, a bad governance to want to change, right? So with where Tanzania finds itself today, with where Mama Samia Suluhu finds herself today, is she the right person to lead the change in Tanzania? And can she?
I don't think that Mama Samia Suluhu is the right person to do that because, one, she has been a key player in bringing the country where it is now. She has been there when Tanzanians were on the streets, when Lissu came out with a no election, no reform statement. She was in Tanzania. What does this tell us? That our leaders have not been listening to the people. Because if they were, we would not be where we are today. This arrogancy and tendency of ignoring the masses is something that is going to lead us to more bloodshed because people will always resist no matter what. There are suggestions that there is need for interim government in Tanzania. There is need for the SADC, EAC, the neighbors, the Africa Union to come in on board and suggest who is going to lead this, because already Mama Samia has proved to be irresponsible enough.
But Felix, we were talking about an interim government, but let's look at, because we can't talk about what others want without reading the constitution of the country that is Tanzania.
Sure.
You know, once elections have been done, results have been announced, you can't challenge that in a court of law. And the only other court that is in jurisdiction of Tanzania that can hear that matter does not have the powers to do that. So in terms of elections being called out and a president, Samia Suluhu is the president. That is a fact. But here is a question where, how then does these other bodies, we talk about the African Union, we know what the chairperson of AUC said, congratulated Mama Samia Suluhu. Later, the African Union report came and called out that election, saying the election was sham, right? But we look at the East Africa region, what is President William Ruto saying? Supported and congratulated Mama Samia Suluhu, you know. Other African leaders are silent, but silence as well is communication. It's communication, whether we like it or not. So in terms of Samia Suluhu, the people of Tanzania and the region and all these other governments just finding a solution for Tanzania, number one, is constitutional change a must, a way to look at it as a solution for Tanzania?
I've found that our leaders are only using constitution when it's protecting them, suitable for them. But when it comes to the masses, they tend to operate outside the constitutions, the respective constitutions of the East African countries. So, suggestion or coming up with an idea of having an interim government, it's something that we all know it's not within the confines of the Tanzanian constitution. But what if the worst of the worst comes? What do we do? Because now we will not abide to the constitution when it's favoring them. I think it's high time now we abandon this constitution and we review it, because there is need for the constitutional reforms itself. It's not working well for the Tanzanians.
So, if you look at it from what you're saying, is it that we revert to what the true spirit of leadership is, that the people are supreme than any constitution?
Exactly.
Because you cannot use a constitution of any country to suppress or oppress the same
masses.
people who came up with the same constitution. So if the people are disgruntled, that whether these are the Tanzanian or any other country, by a constitution that they have at the moment, reviewing it should not be a challenge. They should come out if they need to continue agitating. And I like what the Zambians did. I'm not a stone thrower myself yet, but
you're practicing.
I'm learning. You saw what they did to their president because of merely sending the congratulatory messages to Mama Samia. That's a disgruntledness we are talking about in Africa. So how then do you feel as a Free Kenya movement, where are we as a population of Africa in terms of understanding that we, the people of Africa, are superior than any constitution, than any president in whichever country we come from?
I think it's high time for those who are in power to learn, because they are united to suppress the masses, the citizens of East Africa. And these citizens are going to unite because they are they are sharing their problems. We are going through abductions in Kenya. Tanzanians are doing the same. We are witnessing arbitrary arrests, trumped up charges, and these, like, they are using the same manuscript to lead these three countries. So now that the animal that is chasing us as East Africans is one, we have to unite and face that animal.
Dismas, before you chime in, let's look at the question that is us as a continent, right? Because I just don't want to limit this conversation to just Tanzania, but it is an example of, first of all, how not to have an election and how not to lead. As a continent, as a people, are we so hungry for better leadership? Do we participate in elections with a view of changing leadership in our jurisdictions, in our countries, do we take time to scrutinize each and every leader that comes forth and says, I want to lead you, and this is my manifesto, this is my promise, and this is where I want to take the country? Or do we take a back seat and say, a politician will come, this is what they will say, and I will just vote?
First of all, we have a leadership crisis across Africa, a massive leadership crisis. And most of the time when we go to the elections, we do not necessarily elect persons with character, capacity, and competence. Mm-hmm. We just, most of the time, we tend to elect snake oil salesmen. I mean, it's the person who comes with the gift of gab, who convinces you, who speaks, very good English, very good Swahili, or your mother tongue. And normally this is anchored in tribal nationalism. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, for instance, the elections you have in Kenya, when you look at the political parties in Kenya are no more than tribal vehicles. I mean, you have for instance, look at DSP. Mm-hmm. Where is the DSP anchored? You may have a few guys from outside the mountain, but essentially DSPs are DCP, I think it's called.
DCP,
yeah. It's a Mount Kenya party. They say they want to form a coalition. So they look for a party from Kisii, a party from Coast, and essentially it's a tribal census. Now, the moment when Kenyans will realize that it doesn't matter whether it's your cousin who is the president, it could be your cousin, it could even be your mother, but they'll not add any value. Because, for instance, it's Dr. Matiang'i warned us during the last election that people who have presented themselves for these elections, a number of them are wash guys, a number of them are rapists. They don't qualify for leadership. But guess what we did? We voted for them. Then you've got organizations in Kenya which are supposed to sieve or go through the vetting, but they said that you have to exhaust the entire appeal mechanism.
Yeah.
So somebody has stolen a cow, and this is a cow, this is a thief. But mnasema mtu wetu. So these, for 4.5 years, all of us know the kind of leaders we want. We go through history, we go through philosophy, we go through everything.
We go through pain and tears and cries. Yeah.
But as we approach the ballot, then if you're Onyango, you remember, there's Omondi who is running.
Yeah.
And this Omondi, evidence from all governance institutions demonstrates that he has no capacity to lead. But you vote for them. And then you expect miracles during the 4.5 years. I mean, these people, we say that they cannot even become chairman of the local
cattle dip.
When you're having a funeral or a wedding, this guy cannot be the treasurer, but you make him your governor. And then you expect miracles. For instance, you have a piece of legislation on anti-money laundering. Mm-hmm. So how do you expect guys who are beneficiaries of wash? We are told there are members of the National Assembly to support that piece of legislation. But now Wambua here raises fundamental issues which require a lawyer. If you're going to change the constitution, are you going to use constitutional means to change the constitution, or you are going to use unconstitutional means to change the constitution? When he says that that now Tanzania needs to, that Africa Union, SADC, they need to get an interim leader. I mean, how do you what is the framework of, is the interim leader going to be Tanzanian, or is going to be from Kenya or Nigeria? We need to look at this thing of leadership of a sovereign state critically. When Kenya was faced with a similar situation after the 2007 elections, a gentleman by the name Kofi Annan jetted into the nation, and there was an amendment. You remember the Nusumukate administration. Mm-hmm. But still the person who signed the amendments to law was President Mwai Kibaki. So if you're proposing that you're going to have unconstitutional means of getting these, and also I don't understand how Wambua comes with this thing, that get Africa Union, which is supposed to be disbanded, and get a SADC, which is a club of leaders in the region,
and part of AU,
that are the ones to suggest an interim leader. So are you suggesting that Tanzania is no longer a sovereign state, that they have no capacity to govern themselves, the election notwithstanding? That is the reason why I keep on insisting that while we may have studied political science and philosophy, we need to look at let's run away from theory, as Josephat has been talking about the theory. We want to liberate the entire of Africa. But what is the practical aspect? So are you going to tell the CDF of the Tanzanian forces that now we've given you an interim leader from Algeria or from Haiti, and this is the guy you're going to salute?
As Wambua comes in, you know, it is imperative to appreciate the fact that these are not theories. These are policies, these are strategies. This is how you formulate governance and leadership. Our constitution is a whole set of theories on how we want to be governed. And those are the rules we live by. The African Union has a whole charter that talks about democracy, elections, and governance in Africa. They have a whole checklist on what an election in Africa, on how one becomes a president, ought to look like. Whether you have a military, government, or you have a democratic government like we do. So, the African Union is a major stakeholder in this process, and in all processes of Africa, because we cannot not have people overturn the will of the people, and then they go and have a sitting in the African Union, and they'll be speaking there saying, the people that I represent, given the country they come from, are saying this and they want this. That's a huge disconnect. So everybody must be held accountable. The African Union must step up in policy. If what the service charter they have is what we have all signed to, we all should subscribe to that. And it says there has to be freedom of association by allowing all political party players to have political parties, so you can have an opposition and have a well, good political framework, an election. Then you can have a leader who can come and sit with us or with them at the African Union. The same goes for the East African community. Therefore, we cannot bury our head in the sand and say that these are just theories. It is not just a theory to say that Kenyans were abducted in Uganda and the government did not do anything, that we are beginning to give credit to a former president. Yet we have a government in place. We have a system in place. We have a whole Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Kenyans have died in Tanzania. The least that should happen by now, those bodies should be here, so the families can bury them, mourn and bury them. So we have to agree that these are not just theory. This is the calling for the rule of law. The rule of law is very clear. 1 + 1 should be equal to this. Anything outside that, then Wambua and all of us should stand up and say, this is not acceptable.
Wambua.
Again, it's sad that, as I have been saying here, repeatedly said, that we want to be so religious on the Constitution when it's protecting them, but not the people. When we talk of Tanzania, we respect Tanzania as activists, as human rights defenders. We are not, we have no any interests with the leadership of Tanzania. But when it comes to violation of human rights, now we come in. It's when you see what is happening on the internet, when you hear of mass graves, when you hear that people are being dumped into the ocean, bodies are being dumped into the ocean, why should we keep clinging on the document that is not helping us? It's high time that these bodies come up, or else the people themselves, who are more supreme than the Constitution, will rise and will put in place those who they feel that will govern them or lead them in a better way. You cannot lead people without their consent. You cannot impose yourself onto people. It's high time that we reason as people, we reason as East Africans, and we speak as Africans. Because if Tanzania had no independence in 1961, maybe other regions, other countries in the region would still be colonized, would have taken longer. But Tanzania had to provide that space, and the same should happen. We also need to provide space for others also to grow their country, to grow their constitution, to grow their democratic space.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that we're having this conversation at a point where we have divergent views, you know. So there is the aspect of what democracy is.
Sure.
And you see, whether a theory or not, we look at what is the best practice in having a good election, what is the best practice in protecting human rights, what is the agreeable bare minimum for each and every single leader out there. Because when we sit and say, the election in Tanzania, was it free and fair? That's the question in this room. Was it free and fair? Another question would be, did we even have an election in Tanzania? Or is it an election on paper, but on ground, mambo ni different? You know, these are the questions that you have to ask. And when you look at, say, the East Africa Community Charter, what does it say in terms of your membership? The kind of government you have, the kind of elections that is agreeable in EAC. Then we go to SADC. What does SADC again speak with regard to all these issues and all these theories we're talking about? We come to Africa Union. What does it say about elections? What does it say about democracy? What does it say about a president, a military government, and all that? And if we take all those and put them on the table and just dissect, there are some things that just did not happen. So my question is, knowing that that is where we are as a continent, this is where we are with Tanzania. First of all, African Union, how would they admit a president at its sittings when knowing very well the charter with which it ascribes to, the East Africa Community, the charter with which all the member states ascribe to, SADC, all the member states ascribe to specific tenets that were not met? How do they go about it as a measure of ensuring that whatever happened in Tanzania does not happen in any other country? Or if we see them admit them, it is a question of, we are here to eat, it's just not our time yet.
You've raised very important and pertinent questions. The only challenge is that Africa Union has no capacity for what you're talking about. Because who controls the Africa Union? Mm-hmm. It's the same heads of state you're talking about. The only time Africa Union comes in and takes a decision to expel a country or membership is after a military coup. When there's a military junta, then that one, they are very fast. But you will notice that at every point in time, the only thing they do is to issue a statement. And if you go through the statements they've issued, it appears like there's a template. It's always the same thing. So expecting the Africa Union to do anything is expecting too much. In my view, for any country to have a democratic election, the processes must be internal within the sovereign. And it's Barack Obama who said that a democracy is actually, it's an ongoing experiment, that you have to keep on trying to make sure that this thing works within your expectation. And a good election, most of the time, where there is serious political competition, normally it's 51, the winner gets 51, and then the loser gets maybe 47, and then of course there are other people who share those votes. And also, before you can say whether an election was free, fair and credible, you have to look at the 5 years before the election. How easy is it to register a political party in a particular country? Do these political parties have resources? For people who are who are going to be in the political competition, are they free to present their issues? Can they have meetings? Can they hold rallies? Can they do all these kind of things? Because on the material day when you are casting the ballot, that is the last step. So you must look at this entire process. Mm-hmm. Now, Kenya has gone the extra mile. That you even have something called the Political Parties Fund. There are these political parties. They're special purpose vehicles, but they are given funds. And it would be very interesting to get the Auditor General's opinion about how the resources are spent. But the political parties have got resources. And then the politicians in Kenya essentially have got a blank check. They can do whatever they want to do. They can hold as many rallies as they want. Now, the reason why it's important for CCM to offer leadership is for the same reason I've given about President Moi. There was pressure, but at the end of the day, he had the arm and the knife. I did refuse to accept Section 2A. There would have been pressure maybe for another 1 day or another 2 days or 1 year, but it would have brought attention. So it's important for CCM to appreciate that having status quo is no longer sustainable, that they have to wake up and smell the coffee, that the population needs change. But for this process to be smooth and efficient and effective, it has to be midwifed by the CCM leadership. Just like President Moi took a departure from what Kanu was saying, they do want Section 2A. In fact, everyone who stood up to speak said Section 2A is the best thing that is happening in this part of the world. They did not want it to move till the president said, we are going to amend it. Now, the same situation obtained with President Kibaki after the Bangor election. You're coming up with all these things, but still it takes, after all the pressure, the international community, Kofi Annan even having a diplomatic cold. You remember there was pressure from the US, from UK, everybody. And interestingly enough, is that one of the key architects of that process is President Jakaya Kikwete. I mean, you remember he was in town, and so this thing happened. But when the legislation went to the National Assembly, still it took President Kibaki to sign it into law. So there's an opportunity for CCM to work with all stakeholders, not just limited to the opposition politicians and opposition party, the business community, civil society, activists, because everybody has got an idea, especially if you're a resident or domiciled in Tanzania, that you've got an insurable interest in the going concern of your country. So everybody has got an interest, and then the leadership must midwife it. And if they don't do that, then it means this thing is there's going to be latent fury, and if they don't midwife the process, then after another 5 years, then they're going to have a disaster.
Kamanya,
No.
I ask the question.
Right.
President Samia Suluhu being at the center and forefront of what has happened in Tanzania today, do you think the people of Tanzania believe and trust that she is the change maker?
Well, they did not even want her to be anywhere near the position of influencing any change. If they did, we would not be where we are.
She got 30 million votes, though.
Well, and they were tallied, I think, overnight. That system, I want to import it to Kenya because our tallying system, our bombers, takes days. But they did 31 million, I think, overnight.
Yeah.
However, away from that, the question I'm raising for all of us, should it be this difficult for a population of any country in Africa to make a choice of their leader? Because that's the basic question we are asking. Should it be this difficult for us as Africans to decide, whichever sovereign country we come from, the person we want to be our number one subject? Because that is what Tanzanian are contending with now. Uganda will be facing the same next year. I think that will be the semi-finals. Then we'll have the finals in 2027 here in Kenya. So we need to look at the democratic space. We need to allow the populace to come out and voice their opinions, because since time immemorial, man in Africa has had governance. This is not a new thing. It's not a new concept. We had kings, we had kingdoms. Some are still existing, even in Uganda and in the western part of Africa. And people used to make decisions. And it used to be, though there would be war, but then the majority would have their way, and then the minority would have their say. That's all Tanzanians are asking for, that allow us to come out and vote. If more people still vote for you to be the president as Mama Suluhu, then you become the legitimate president of that country and many other countries in Africa. So I don't think it should be made this. We don't have to labor for our freedom of expression. What we should be laboring for now is the economic liberation of our continent. And remember, bad elections give you bad governance, that gives you bad economy, and they sustain poverty.
Dennis, allow me to be the devil's advocate and pose a question to Wambua. Wambua, what do you make of the elections or lack of the same in North Korea?
What do you make of elections?
Or lack of it in North Korea?
Okay, North Korea is a special case because we know they are in a socialistic environment. They are socials. They believe in socialism. So for us who are in Africa, we are a bit confused because there is socialism, there is capitalism. we are in that. We are swimming in that ocean.
Okay, then forget North Korea for a while. Let's go up the road. Go to the two Sudans, South Sudan and Sudan. South Sudan and Sudan.
That is what now is eating our Africa. That the external influence is cropping, and the same is happening to Tanzania, I think, because you see now Suluhu, Ruto, they are giving out the national assets. They are giving out the ports in Dar es Salaam, in Tanzania.
I would beg you to spend a little more time on South Sudan, whether you've prescribed a solution as you seem to have for Tanzania?
And this is how I would look at it.
For Sudan.
As Wambua comes
Yeah.
in, let's look at it this way. You see, there are different kind of wars
Yeah.
that we are experiencing in Africa. Some of them is physical, actual war, like in the Sudans, we could say. And others is now suppression of the human rights, where they cannot import a war into a country. Like Kenya, we take guns and go to the streets. They attack our freedoms and our rights. Now, a bigger question would be, before we talk about the lack of the election in Sudan, so in Africa, we know there is no production of guns. But how do we sustain a war years on end in any African country? That's the infiltration Wambua is talking about. That the external forces come.
But Kenya produces guns.
Well, how many?
Guys,
And to whom do we supply?
let me be
You
the
see?
midwife
So
here.
these are the things we need to.
let me be the midwife here, right?
You want to midwife the process?
Let me midwife the process, and we must get this baby today. With
Right.
Solutions, right?
Uh-huh.
How I look at the situation here, whether you look at Tanzania, whether you look at Sudan, at Libya, let's look at the entire continent as a whole. And I would, even before I talk about that, let's look at what is happening in EU. 27 countries have come together, have agreed a single currency, and things seem to be working for them in a good way. We come to the continent. The African Union itself, even in terms of its own budget, it is monies that have been donated by those who would say neocolonialism is taking place in the continent. And I look at it in terms of, as a continent, as a people of this continent, what really do we want? Do we want a democracy that is engineered, a democracy that has been prescribed by us as Africans? Not democracy where we've gone to benchmark in the US, because Africa, we're good at benchmarking. But that as a continent, we've sat down and decided that, guys, enough is enough. These are our problems and these are the solutions, and that each and every single country is bound by these solutions that we have prescribed to ourselves because we've seen the problems that we have. When you talk about Tanzania, in Kenya, it is not because we do not have anything to talk about. I have a colleague who was shot at the bathroom in Tanzania the other day. I have a friend in Tanzania who could not go to her house for 5 days. We have Kenyans who've been killed in Tanzania. We sit here today, Oyo and Njagi have been arrested in Tanzania. Authorities have told the world, in Uganda, have told the world that they do not know where these two Kenyans are. Until the head of state comes out and finally admits that, yes, we had these individuals, we pulled them up and we put them in a refrigerator. Yet, that midwifing as well took place by the former head of state. Yet we have a government of Kenya with a sitting head of state and a foreign affairs principal secretary. You go to Sudan. What is happening in Sudan? Again, clamor for leadership and power. And you find people killing each other for the sake of leadership. And I ask myself the question, when will we as the people of Africa say enough is enough? We need proper change, because that change will not get here unless we as a people say, this is what we want and this is the direction we are taking. My humble submissions. We have a minute.
Well, I think mine is simple. We need to decolonize Africa.
For a second time.
Yes. And so that we can excel. Simple. We need to decolonize Africa. Regardless of the phase you are in as a country in Africa, take charge. You, the people of that country, we, the people of Kenya, we own and own that country. The process is ours to execute and to propel. You cannot wait for the benefactors of these colonial systems to give us the change we deserve. That will never come. So let's decolonize our continent.
Felix.
It's high time. It's high time. We write our own history now. We start writing our own stories. It's time that I'm seeing another scramble and partitioning of Africa again. So as people of this continent, we have to wake up, we have to raise and say no to these people who are coming with goodies that are meant to colonize us again. Thank you.
You remember there was a struggle for the new constitution. And eventually, when President Kibaki took office, the late John Mishuki came and admitted and said, wait a minute. In fact, we didn't even want another constitution. We just wanted President Moi out. And President Kibaki led the nation using the old constitution in a very solid manner. Mm-hmm. So everything that you've described can be answered in 3 words. Mm-hmm. You need leaders who have character, capacity, and competence. You can have the best constitution in the world, but if the leadership doesn't have character, a complete waste of time.
A good place to end the conversation this morning. Felix Ombo, National Coordinator, Free Kenya Move, Tanzania's polls in question. What next is the question at 8 a.m. Good morning.
The latest